when it finally did happen, it felt unreal.
President Biden about to sign the Inflation Reduction Act into law.
It gives me goosebumps.
Let me say from the start, with this law, the American people won and the special interests lost.
The Inflation Reduction Act is a summation of many of CAP's ideas since its founding.
And it's critical to have a space like CAP that provides a toolkit in the world of ideas to determine what can help you to advance progressive policies.
In many ways, the Center for American Progress has a really simple mission, which is to improve people's lives. And in that respect, the Inflation Reduction Act is one of the most consequential bills that we've been able to be a part of in our 20-year history. Several years ago, the climate team at the Center for American Progress put out a roadmap that involved trying to pass legislation with only 50 votes in the Senate, using a process called reconciliation. And that really became the roadmap that Congress used to get this done.
The Inflation Reduction Act will change many lives for many years to come.
No one earning less than $400,000 a year will pay a penny more in federal taxes.
In a way, I still get chills just thinking about it and thinking about the opportunities that we as a country will now have.
But the road to get here has been long and challenging.
U.S. coastlines will experience a profound sea level rise by 2050.
The downpour that already caused so much damage.
Everything is gone.
I feel that was my last day.
We've never seen something like this.
From my perspective, the Inflation Reduction Act really started as its own strategy and concept about 5.5 years ago. October 2019, we released CAP's 100% Clean Future report, thinking through the investments that were going to be necessary to address climate change. In February of 2020, we put together 17 pages of climate investment priorities with more than 50 environmental organizations and others supporting that agenda. About 90% of our overall set of recommendations from the 17 pages of investment priorities made it into the IRA at the end of the day. It's still amazing.
Americans are feeling the pain of slow wage growth.
CEO paychecks generally went up last year.
The wage stagnation of the last couple decades seems to be more of a policy choice.
I'm not making ends meet.
In 2019, CAP identified tax enforcement as an area where there was a particular need for action after years of funding cuts. The audit rate for millionaires had plummeted by 70-some%. And so we started writing reports that highlighted the problems at the IRS, but I think more importantly connected the issue of inadequate tax enforcement to justice.
The child that I gave birth to, my flesh and blood, I lost him because of pharmaceutical greed.
It's either take this pill or I'm going to die.
Forces patients to choose between taking the medication or spending the money for whether it's food or transportation or housing.
And we're certainly not the first company to raise drug prices.
For healthcare, the reforms that are in the IRA actually began a couple years ago as H.R. 3, a bill that was passed by the House with many of the same elements: an inflation rebate, drug negotiation, and lower cost sharing for seniors. Every frustration or loss that we face is a learning opportunity. The Inflation Reduction Act is a bill that went through many iterations, and the reforms themselves went through many iterations.
The prescription drug provisions in the Inflation Reduction Act are the ones that most Americans are going to feel very directly, especially seniors. It limits the out-of-pocket costs at $2,000, and then it starts to negotiate the price over time of 20 life-saving medications so that Americans and seniors on Medicare aren't being gouged by pharmaceutical companies.
We can draw a direct line from the strategy sessions, the brainstorming, the work that was done in the very dark days of the beginning of the Trump administration to the passage of the bill.
The motion is adopted.
The affirmative and the bill, as amended, is passed.
There you go. It's now law.
Every success in this city and in general has 1,000 authors. And I feel like the Inflation Reduction Act personifies that.
We would not have the IRA if we didn't have the investment over the last decade plus into CAP fueling our research, our data gathering, and our advocacy. That is the bottom line. It would not exist.
The donors have really been key partners with us in this entire strategy. The donors gave us the space to experiment and have the freedom to try something out, recognizing it might fail.
It enables us to think not just about what's happening today or happening tomorrow, but what we want to happen 5 years from now or 10 years from now.
I think that our donors are as mission-driven as our staff is. That's why it's so easy for me to think of them as partners.
President Biden calls it one of the most significant laws in American history.
There's no question that the Inflation Reduction Act is a consequential piece of legislation, but we're not going to lose sight of the fact that it doesn't solve all of the challenges facing this country.
One of the biggest disappointments was that the expanded child tax credit was allowed to expire after 2021 and then wasn't resurrected.
We still need a lot to do to get those 8% of people who don't have coverage better health insurance coverage.
One of the reasons that working on climate change is so difficult is you can't flip a switch and stop emissions and have the planet recover overnight. And one thing that's kept me positive and optimistic in this work is that I would never bet against humanity and our ingenuity and ability to find the innovations that are going to address a problem like this. And what the Inflation Reduction Act gives us is the time and the investments to get the rest of the way.